Welcome to Real Nerds Podcast, unofficially the official podcast at Denver Comic Con 2014 and beyond. Sit back and relax because you're about to listen to some exclusive interviews from Mile High Horror Fest 2013. Enjoy. Welcome to Real Nerds Podcast at Mile High Horror 2013, the only podcast at Mile High Horror and probably any horror fest this year. I'm Ryan, with me is James, and we have returning on the show, Director Extraordinaire Dan Myrick. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Great to be here, guys.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Is this, how many times you've been to Denver now?
This is my second festival being here, and I was on the jury on the first one. So, but yeah, it's been great. I love coming here, and it's getting bigger and better than ever. And it's nice. The weather's real nice today, too.
No, it's been nice.
It's really cool because we noticed it's a lot bigger this year. You know, it's just the buzz around here. And you're also on the jury for the short films. Is there any films that have really been standing out that you've enjoyed?
This year I'm on the jury for the feature films.
The feature films.
Yeah, and I was on for the short films. The first year, and then second year I was on features. So, yeah, I mean, the quality of the programming just keeps getting better every year. And this year we have several films that are really notable films that we like, that I've seen that I really like a lot. I can't give anything away, but yeah, it's the really high quality stuff.
Very cool. So, for people who don't know, you're the director of the Blair Witch Project.
That little movie, yeah.
I don't know if anyone knows. Does anyone out there? Does anyone know that movie, Blair Witch Project?
Anyone?
A few people have heard about it.
Has anybody heard of that?
It may have been important.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. On last year's show, we talked in length about the Blair Witch Project. What are you working on right now, and what's tickling your fancy?
Well, I've got a project now that just got picked up that we're going to be probably shooting either later this year or first of next year. We're casting at the moment. I'm very excited about that. You know, what I can tell of it is that it's kind of based on a true story about a stalker that moves into this girl's house and literally lives under her bed for several days and videotapes everything she does. So it's going to be kind of a combination of first-person video and, regular narrative storytelling. But so it's a script that I wrote, and the producers on it, Richard Halpern and Sean Papazian, kind of helped us get this together. But we're doing this with Radar Pictures, and this should be, coming out, probably later next year once we're all done with it. But that's what I'm immersed in right now at the moment, and looking very forward to doing it.
So have you started pre-production on it? Do you know when cameras are rolling by any chance?
We're in a soft prep now. We're have reached out to a few name actresses for the female lead role, and would like to be rolling cameras like the first of the year if all goes well. And so far it's working out.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah. As
a director, are you a very meticulous director where you draw storyboards and you follow them precisely, or do you like a lot of more freedom?
It's a balance for me. It depends on the kind of movie that I want to shoot. If it has, something that has a lot of action sequences or the really costly shots, you want to have those kind of mapped out pretty meticulously. On this particular film, it all takes place in one location, and we haven't nailed down the location yet, so I'll have loose storyboards through it, but it's very performance-driven, and I like to give the actors a lot of freedom to kind of roam. As long as they get the point of the scene across, I'm pretty flexible. They don't have to say every word that's on the script the way it's written. As long as I get honest emotion, that's my biggest concern. And on a small movie like this, you have that kind of flexibility, and you're not, so concerned about every angle getting nailed down exactly because you're spending so much money on an effects shot or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it just depends, but this one's pretty loose.
I'm curious, too, because when you were talking about Blair Witch last time we had you on, you said that you had an idea of scenes, and you kind of had what you wanted, we were looking for from the actors. Is this one a little more scripted, or are you going to let them kind of have the same freedom?
Well, this one's more scripted, and script defined as, having dialogue written in there. Blair was basically a script without the dialogue. We didn't want the actors feeling like they were, saying scripted dialogue. But it was very detailed as far as the scenes, what they would be doing from moment to moment, and what they would be doing from scene to scene. And then once we started shooting Blair, we just kind of let them have the freedom to work within those parameters. And then things would change up over time. And this movie, which is called Under the Bed, is a little bit more structured, like a normal film. But I like the freedom giving the actors freedom to really express themselves, and for me that's part of the process. I mean, if you've done your job in the casting and cast someone who's really talented and really good and they are totally dialed into the character, then you don't need to over-direct them. You let them bring to the party what they are going to bring to it and let them be who they are. And I find that process very exciting. I like working and collaborating with actors when they do that.
Have you cast the movie yet?
No, I haven't cast it yet. We're reaching out. Like I said, we have to kind of get the lead nailed down, and then we'll kind of cast around the lead. So we're reaching out as we speak to one in particular over this weekend, hoping she'll take it. But we have a hit list, a very short list of girls that we want to go after. But it'll happen. It's just a matter of who gets involved.
This might be too reveal too much, but obviously, so you have a villain underneath the bed, and what are you looking for in a villain that's underneath the bed? And from the point of view, is he going to be like a creepy guy, or I mean?
Well, I don't want to give too much away, but the villain is just kind of a sort of a demented individual. I mean, most stalkers arguably have a screw loose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one kind of takes it to the nth degree and violates this woman, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I mean, he gets into her life like you can't imagine. And so it really kind of takes the whole stalker idea to the extreme. And most of what you see from the villain is from his perspective, from his POV, because he's videotaping everything. So it's kind of a unique take on the villain perspective, because you don't really see him until the very end of the movie, and but you see what he sees throughout the film.
And see, that's a different kind of horror too. I mean, it's a horror that is extremely real. I mean,
yeah.
And that to me, like, that's terrifying. When you said the name of the movie, me and James looked at each other. Like,
yes.
that is pretty scary.
Yeah. No, I literally, whenever I've pitched the film, we've been working on this for 2 years now, but whenever I pitch the basic premise, it gets that kind of visceral reaction. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only other film that got that for me was Blair Witch. Whenever I kind of gave him the one-line pitch, I got the same kind of reaction, and I'm getting it on this film as well. So not that I anticipate it being nearly as big as Blair, but it's just one of those things that taps into that kind of primal fear we all have, and that's what I like about it, is that it really kind of gets under your skin, thinking about someone living inside your house and you don't know it.
Because that's horrible. I mean, I couldn't even imagine like someone living underneath my bed, and I mean, that's basically the monster under the bed.
Absolutely,
he's the monster, and that's a wonderful take on it.
When it's a really cool idea, because like, that feeling you get, especially when you're really bad at not being scared like I am, where you go see a scary movie and you get home and your house is dark and you're walking around and you have this feeling that, like, what if someone's there?
Right.
And this preys on that. Like, just that idea really draws in this idea that, like, there could really be someone there and you don't know it. And that is chilling. That's part of what it is.
And, the irony of this woman, as the screws start to turn, she's locking the doors and, wanting to keep what she thinks is, a threat out on the outside out, but it's actually on the inside. And and again, we're not giving too much away, but I love playing on people's kind of preconceptions like that. And I just think, if we can pull it off, that it could be kind of a new way, a new kind of villain, a new kind of way to do a thriller, a psychological thriller. And I'm really excited about it. We've been working on this for a couple of years now.
Cool. And is it on purpose, too, to have point-of-view shots from the villain? Because in that way, you're kind of making the audience be
absolutely
the villain.
Absolutely.
And so that, to me, would also add to the horror of the movie, because
absolutely.
You don't want to be that guy.
You don't. You do not. And I'm definitely taking a page from Blair in that regard, because that POV is subjective. You're forced to be in the villain's head through 95% of the movie.
Wow.
And you're forced to see what his attention is on. Like, if he zooms in on something and is focused on her face or her hands, you're in his head through most of the movie. So you're forced to kind of interpret what he's seeing and doing in that kind of interesting way. And I just thought that would be really creepy. Very, very creepy.
It is, because it's also really voyeuristic. I mean,
absolutely.
You feel like... I want to see this movie so bad. Is it coming out right now? Or
That's good. Well, we are, like I said, we're very excited. Radar Pictures is involved, and they've done Chronicles of Riddick, and they just released Spring Breakers, which did pretty well, and so they're very excited. And again, it's all about casting. It's getting the right cast around, and if I do my job right, this could be a nice, tight psychological thriller. Very much, in that what you don't see is scarier than what you do see kind of thing. Although there's plenty of that in there, but I just it plays in my wheelhouse. It's really, I feel, an extension of Blair in some respects, but something broader in other ways.
And when you promote this movie, are you going to go about it the same way as Blair? Obviously, you can't recreate that magic,
right?
But are you going to do maybe like a website or something where people?
We're talking about. I can't let anything out of the bag too much right now, but I love the idea of doing something a bit viral that you have to kind of start with a long lead kind of viral campaign, just to have fun with it, because it's it is something. It's one of those things like everyone thinks about in one way or another. It's like, is there somebody in my house? So we have a couple of ideas that we hope that we can run by Radar, and once the movie gets the cast in place, we can start playing around with that. But we're going to have some fun with the pre-marketing. Also, I would love to let the fans in on our process, how we shoot the film, some of the unique stuff that we're going to do with it. And just engage the fans like we did with Blair Witch early on in the process.
And is it hard to have such a successful movie as Blair Witch and then try to get another movie kind of similar in the way that it's made? Or are you pigeonholed in that?
In some respects, yes. I mean, it's unavoidable. Blair Witch will always be associated with my name, and I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I mean, it was a lightning in a bottle, and I feel very fortunate that I was a part of it. And I'm realistic, though. I mean, it was one of those things that comes along once in a lifetime, that all the planets aligned, and so for me, I learned a lot from Blair Witch. I learned a lot of things that made me a director, how actors work, and I'm going to use that in every movie that I do. So, as an artist, quote unquote, I like to think I'm moving on from Blair Witch and doing other things. But you take what you learn on every movie you do and apply it to the next one. So I'll never be, divorced from Blair Witch. But I think Under the Bed will be something that's different. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you were a fan of Blair Witch, you're probably gonna like Under the Bed as well.
So it's more of actually like a springboard for you than it would be like a hindrance, the Blair Witch phenomenon.
Absolutely.
And that's so cool and refreshing to hear someone who's made that movie and made it so... it's part of popular culture.
Absolutely.
And to embrace it is amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's you go through bouts of frustration when you go in to pitch something and they want, give me another Blair Witch. So, well, if I could do that, I wouldn't need to pitch movies. I'd own an island somewhere. But no, I love the genre. I love making films. I got to make my mark on this industry. I mean, how many independent filmmakers can say they were able to do that? Yeah. Right? So for me, it's like, okay, I accomplished that. Now let's go have some fun. I can do cool movies and hopefully work with cool people. And that life doesn't get any better than that, really. I mean, it's tough. And it's hard, and you're constantly hustling. That's the business we're in. But I've worked a lot of really crummy jobs in my life, and I have to remind myself, being associated with Blair Witch, for better or worse, is a tough problem to have. It's just not.
And it's an interesting thing, especially as such a film fan as I am, to look at it. And every time that there's a Chronicle or a Cloverfield, that movie comes up, and that's the movie they compare it to, because it's part of why not just was that movie really loved and a huge horror movie at its time, but that style became a thing that everybody wanted to try for a while, and continues to. It keeps popping up.
Yeah,
and that's where
Yeah. I'm really kind of blown away how that kind of approach, which we didn't invent it. I mean, we just sort of popularized it.
Yeah, right.
But but how that's been reapplied on so many kinds of movies in so many other ways, on big budget films. Cloverfield's a perfect example. On lower budget films like Paranormal Activity, to see that kind of conceit applied on so many different levels of so many different movies, I never expected it to be to that level.
And is it cool too to know Friday the 13th, which is a huge horror franchise, is now going to kind of go that route as Blair Witch that was so successful? They're exploring found footage. So as a horror fan, that's got to be kind of cool where it's another iconic franchise.
Well, yeah. I mean, and also, again, I mean, giving credit where credit's due, we live in a world where everyone's got video cameras and cell phones with video on them. So I think it's inevitable. Whether we did it or not, I think it's just a matter of time that we would be seeing movies shot from that first-person perspective, because we just all have cameras now. Everyone's their own kind of journalists. So we, movies reflect our popular culture, and I think it was inevitable, whether we popularized it or someone else did.
So why do you think yours is so much more respected than some of the other found footage movies?
I don't know. I mean, I think like anything, some kind of trend that gets set or some kind of stylistic choice that gets made, the first one usually breaks the mold and gets, a lot of nostalgia associated with it. But I also think there's a lot of cheap knockoffs, which kind of give the genre, or can give the genre, a little bit of kind of, it diminishes its value. And then everyone references back to the one that really started it all. And it's not to say that conceit can't be applied really well when done right. It can be. It's just anything that becomes popular tends to get redone and remade very cheaply and all the wrong ways, after that. And so that happens with everybody. I mean, look at when Jaws came out. It's all okay. 72 movies about sharks came out that weren't nearly as good. Everyone points back to Jaws, right? So it's that's not uncommon for that to happen. And I think that's just human nature. I think that's the way our brains are wired. And Blair Witch is one of those films that everyone kind of remembers where they were when they saw it,
Yeah.
Because it was so different and it came out of left field, and and it's just struck a chord. It just struck a chord with everybody.
What movies do you like besides horror movies? Like, what movies have you seen lately that you like now?
Wow. Well, I mean, one of my all-time favorite films is, God, there's so many. That's one of those questions like, okay, which one do I go? I mean, I love comedies, but Alfonso Cuarón is one of my favorite directors, and he's coming out, he just came out with Gravity, which is like a film that I'm dying to see. I've got so many friends that have seen it, so I'm dying to see that. I love his films. Spielberg, he's got, some 2 or 3 of my top films in there. Close Encounters is one that I kind of grew up with that made me want to make movies. The Shining, got me into kind of horror genre. I mean, there's a lot of good movies out there if you look for them. I don't think they're necessarily all coming out of Hollywood, but and a few that I've seen here, have been some great films. So, it's one of those tough questions to answer. Like, what's your favorite film, or what are some of the great films that you've seen? I mean, you have your normal hit list, but then there's those ones that no one's ever heard of, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I love about the festival, is that you find stuff that you don't normally get to see or discover. And I just wish more people had access to, kind of these film festivals. And I think the internet has helped out with that, but still you have to be proactive to come out to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Here's a question I've always wanted to ask, like a real director, and I always forget, and I just remembered it now. When you watch somebody else's movie, is it easy for you to enjoy it, or is it hard because you've worked behind the scenes of movies and you know how they're made?
I mean, there's always that component to watching a film, knowing how films are made. You start analyzing it from a technical standpoint, but the really good movies transcend that. So when you feel yourself pulled into the story and carried along like any other viewer, that's when you know the filmmaker's really doing their job, because they're able to get over that hurdle with you as a filmmaker. And I love it when a film does that. And it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's really exciting. It's like when people tell me when they saw Blair, they were really scared. I don't get scared at movies anymore, and I really envy those that do, because, you can kind of just go in pure. You go in completely without any preconceptions, and you can just enjoy a movie for what it was intended to be. And for guys like us, it's just difficult. It's difficult. And every now and then a film will do that. It's really fun when it happens.
Do you remember the last movie that scared you?
That scared me? It was probably Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, was what really kind of threw me for a loop. That's a difficult movie to watch, and brilliantly done. And what else? Jacob's Ladder really kind of freaked me out. So well done. But it's been a while. It's been a long time since I've really been. I mean, I've had jump scares that will come out. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But something that has that residual effect on you long after the theater, that kind of lingers with you for weeks or months afterwards. It never goes out of your system. It's been a long time. And I think a lot of that has to do with age, too. When you're younger, things just kind of affect you more. And you get older, you get a little more jaded and a little more cynical. It's just the way it is, right?
Yeah.
No, I love those answers. Man. I feel the same way. I don't know if I said this before. I don't know if because I've seen so many horror movies now.
Yeah,
I just
it's just hard to get scared.
Yeah, I mean, I love the creativeness of them, and I love the movie magic behind them.
Yeah, big fan of them. Yeah, but to be like honestly scared, where you're grabbing the guy next to you or the girl next to you, and you're like, that's rare nowadays. It's very, very rare, and I think that's why I kind of do films that are, well, I like to do subject matter that plays kind of in real life. Like Under the Bed is about a stalker, and that could happen. That's not a ghost necessarily or something that's, otherworldly or what have you. So I like the idea of tapping into that neurosis that you can still feel even at the, as jaded as we are. It could be something that could tap into that fear response, no matter, how prepared you may think you are for it.
And I think you're 100% right, because, I mean, you have supernatural things that, for some reason, they leave you. You know what I mean? It's
right.
You leave the theater, you're like, well, I know that can't happen. I know that Freddy Krueger can't invade my dreams.
Yeah.
But I think you're onto something where if you leave the theater watching Under the Bed and you do your job and make it scary.
Yeah. I want everyone checking their closets when they get home. I want everyone looking under the bed. I want everybody double locking the doors. That's what Jaws did to me. Yeah. That's what Jaws did to me. When I came out of the movie theater, I didn't go to the beach for a year, man. I was like flipped out, sharks, totally off limits, right? And that, because they're real. That wasn't a ghost. That wasn't, like you said, something invading your dreams. Or it was, sharks are real. I hear about them all the time, and they were out there. And this movie just drilled right into that on a real fundamental level for a lot of people, and it was very effective. So my hope is, that's one of the ways I pitched this, is like, this is like Jaws inside your house, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is something that could happen, that could be real.
Yeah, there's no escape.
No escape.
And I think that might be the way horror needs to go to transcend where it's at. Is you need to start tapping into fears that people can experience in their daily lives.
I mean, that's a very good point. I don't ever want to say what can or can't be done, because someone always comes out with a great film that you're not expecting. But I think audiences become sophisticated. They'll dial into a certain kind of conceit for a while, a certain kind of premise for a while, and then it'll tire out, and it kind of works in cycles. But I see a lot of these ghost movies coming out and bumps in the night, and I'm like, well, I can't compete with that, really. I can't outflash Hollywood, So I'm going to try something that's a little bit more down to earth, and something that is more Hitchcockian in its genesis, and play on something that could happen. That could be anybody's worst nightmare.
And I think you're right too, because those Paranormal Activity movies and stuff like that, to me, they're not scary like Blair Witch, because in the Paranormal Activity movies, there's always this rumble before the ghost appears or something. So they're setting you up big time for everything that happens in the movies.
Right.
Where, your film strips it of that. It's, you don't know what's happening. It's not that brrr,
right.
Oh, there's the witch,
right?
So is that what you're planning on doing in Under the Bed too? Is not give clues to what's going to transpire?
Yeah, I mean you've already got a super scary ass premise, right? I mean, do I really need to? How much more do I need to do? Right?
Yeah.
So, and my spin on it is that you're going to be seeing a lot of it through my villain's perspective. So I don't think that's really been done to any large degree. I mean, I'm sure it has, but so to me, that's just scary. That freaks me out, and that's what I'm going to play on. I'm going to do a movie that I would want to see, that I think is creepy and scary and unsettling and uncomfortable, and just hope that it plays for everybody else. But I'm going to be relentless. I'm not going to. I think part of what
we are now seeing all ticket holders for Nosferatu.
Okay.
Now seeing all ticket holders for Nosferatu.
Like my voice changed. What was I going to say? I forgot my point now. Nosferatu got me off the subject. I'll remember
bastard.
it. Yeah, I mean, we're just talking about the essence of fear, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is something that I have to constantly sort of like reevaluate in my head, because audiences get more sophisticated, and I just have to kind of stick with what makes me creeped out, what scares me, and hope it scares everybody else.
And do you think that helped you in the writing process for Under the Bed? You just said you weren't scared for a long time.
Right.
So was that something that you think would scare you, and that's kind of drove you through the script writing process?
Absolutely. I mean, I've heard other stories about, I just read an article a few months ago about where a boyfriend moved in an attic, I guess never left the house. He broke up with his girlfriend, and he moved up in the attic, and she didn't know, and he sat there and spied on her for like a year or something like that.
Jeez.
So I'm like, okay, that's pretty freaky, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, a perfect stranger sort of randomly kind of deciding that they're going to move in with you and does so. That's what gets me more than anything. Just the randomness of it. And I get that chill when I read the news. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is go to CNN.com or read the news, and there's 4 or 5 stories in there that just totally creep you out. So for me, it doesn't have to be overthought. Just stay to that pure essence of what really creeps me out, and just nurture that throughout the film, and hopefully, everyone else will have the same response.
Is it hard to make a horror film while you're making it? Meaning, you're shooting it and it doesn't seem scary, but it gets scary when you start editing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's hard to be objective, when you're making a film or when you're writing a script or what have you. And all you really have to go on is that little kind of alligator brain buried deep down inside that says, this feels right. And you get a lot of input from everybody else around you, and you hope you're on the money, but you never really know. You never really know until you're in the theater and it's screening in front of a bunch of people that have no idea what the movie's about, and they get a response, because that's really what you're doing this for. At the end of the day, it's about moving an audience. So you may feel like you've got a scary movie, and it may be even creeping you out on some level, but it's tough to be completely objective through the edit process. You're trying to do things technically, and you may have an idea of what might be scary, but you never really know until you test it on somebody.
And do you know when a take works with an actor? Because I think being scared is a really hard emotion to act,
right?
Without it looking silly,
right?
So how many takes would you say it takes to get that fear right through an actor's performance? Does it vary, or do you know when you're rolling it, like, oh, that's the take, that's the one I'm going to use?
I mean, as far as like knowing the right take, that's usually an instinctual thing. I don't do a lot of takes. I've never had the budget to do 40 takes on anything. I'm usually move pretty fast, and I don't want to burn the actor out, you know. And my experience has been usually the first 3 or 4 takes are, you know, they get it in there if they know what they're doing. But as far as fear is concerned, conveying fear, it depends on the scene. It depends on the kind of thing. Sometimes it's the actor is a focal point of the fear, and they're needing to convey it. Sometimes it's something happening behind them, and they're unaware, and that's the object of the scene or the moment. So you have to know where the audience's perspective is and what you're trying to get on every shot, each particular moment. So it just depends. It depends.
So when you're editing it, then do you have to remove yourself and have other people watch it to see if they're feeling anything for it, or how does that process work? I'm just curious.
I mean, my process is I like to have an editor come in and do a first cut, and I just step away because I know I'm married to every shot. I know how hard it took to get those cars locked off down the street, or you know how far we went over that day or whatever. So I know how much work went in, and I'm biased. I'm admittedly biased on every shot. So I like a fresh pair of eyes to come in that haven't been on set. They don't know how much hard work went into each scene, and to cut it honestly. Say, here's your rough cut. Here's what I feel works, doesn't work, and then consult with the editor over that. And then sometimes I'll take a pass at it to kind of massage it the way I see it. But it's a very organic process for me. It's nothing like I have completely mapped out in my head, because it's like, excuse me. Somebody once said that you have 3 different movies. You have the one you write, the one you shoot, and the one you edit. So you have to embrace that process. And for me, the one's informing the other. And you're never going to have the same movie at the end of the day that you wrote in the beginning of the day. And I'm okay with that. You know, part of being a director or a filmmaker is understanding that that's okay, and don't freak out when it doesn't happen exactly like you think it is. But let that organic process, let the movie tell you what it wants, and don't fight it. So my hope, if you've got talented people around you, actors, you know, production designers, editors, they'll bring their A game to it, and you'll get something that no one expected at the end, and that's when it gets to be really fun.
Very, very cool. Hey, Dan, is there a way we can track the progress of this movie online or on Twitter?
Yeah, we're going to have probably going to have a Facebook page. Once we get a cast, we're probably going to have a Facebook page. So you can go to my Facebook page, you know, which is Dan Myrick, and stay up to date through that. And then once the movie's kind of in production or in prep, then we're going to have its own Facebook page. And then we have some other kind of cool stuff that we're going to have added to that later on. But that you'll be able to stay up to date with that.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Dan.
No problem.
Really
we love having you on here. You're such a nice guy, and you're so informative. I feel like I learn. I'm going to school.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I like that.
So we know you're busy, and we really appreciate you taking time to sit on our show.
No problem. It's an
Yet
honor.
again. Thank you, sir. And we can't wait to see Under the Bed.
Great.
I
great.
really can't.
Well, talk about it. Tell all your friends.
I will, for
You
sure. Big shout out to Alamo Drafthouse for hosting such a wonderful party. Until next year, bye. Visit our website, realnerdspodcast.com. You can tweet us at real_nerds. You can email us even, realnerds@gmail.com. Like us on Facebook. Hey, stream us on Stitcher. You want to call us? 720-6nerds5. And download us on iTunes. Just search Real Nerds. Thank you, Joe Kempter, for the wonderful voiceover. And also Spark Mandrill for the wonderful late-night jazz smooth sounds of movies. You can find him on SoundCloud. This has been a Nebulous Visions production.